If our minds are essentially meaning-making machines and we've developed this network, then why do some of us get trapped in these stories that we tell ourselves about work, while others seem like they're completely immune? Well, in the last couple of videos, we talked about ACT burnout and those 10 types of burnout that we see. These are stories that we live in and we tell ourselves. And then in the last video, I talked about relational frame theory and how these relational frames impact how we view our stories and how work impacts our life. Well, today we're going to be talking about one important skill that changes everything. And it's something that is probably the most important concept in acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's psychological flexibility. Now, if you're new to this channel, my name is Sean Hardy, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor based here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And on this channel, we're here to learn acceptance and commitment therapy, or as it's known as ACT. Now, what is psychological flexibility? Well, psychological flexibility is the ability to stay connected to what matters while difficult thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations are present. Now, notice what's not here in this definition. It's not saying that we're going to get rid of anxiety or difficult thoughts. We're not trying to eliminate stress or uncomfortability. And we're not trying to think more positively. We're trying to challenge or change thoughts directly. Instead, it means to be able to respond to life as it unfolds, even when your mind is making noise, as they often do. Now, let's also look at the opposite, which is psychological inflexibility. Psychological inflexibility is becoming so entangled with thoughts, emotions, and internal experiences that they begin controlling your behavior and pulling you away from what matters. You see the difference? The difference between flexibility and inflexibility isn't whether stress shows up, it's whether stress gets to drive. Now, ACT organizes psychological flexibility into 6 interconnected processes called the Hexaflex. Now, I want you to think of these as 6 separate skills that work together to create psychological flexibility. Now, when these skills are weak, psychological inflexibility grows. But when these skills are strengthened, psychological flexibility grows. So let's look at what this means in a work setting. So I'm going to give you 2 employees, but they get the same email. So I want to imagine these 2 employees at their cubicle, and they receive the exact same message from their supervisor. Can we meet tomorrow? All right, same email, same boss, same situation. But there's very different responses, and it depends on their network of meaning. Now, one employee is inflexible. Their mind immediately says, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm failing. They finally figured out I'm not good enough, and they're going to tell me. He becomes fused with those thoughts, and the thoughts feel true. He spends the evening replaying mistakes from the past and imagining disasters in the future. His goals shift from doing what matters to getting rid of that anxiety. Keeps convincing himself it's not going to be what I imagine. He avoids the discomfort by checking his emails repeatedly, seeking if there's maybe reassurance that his boss maybe wanted to clarify it's not for anything that you're in trouble with. And he's mentally rehearsing every possible outcome. His identity becomes wrapped in the story as well. I'm the employee who always messes things up. The next day, he enters the meeting exhausted and defensive. This is psychological inflexibility. What about employee 2? Well, they're flexible. You see, the same thoughts show up. What if I'm in trouble? What if this goes badly? But she notices them, and she recognizes them as thoughts, not facts. And she allows the anxiety to be present without spending the evening trying to fight it. She returns her attention to what is actually happening right now in the room. She remembers the kind of employee she wants to be. She wants to be responsible, honest, and professional. She prepares for the meeting and then spends the evening with her family. The next day, she walks into the meeting nervous but present. this is psychological flexibility. So notice something important. The difference wasn't the absence of stress. The difference was the relationship to stress. Now, a little advice to bosses. When you send an email, can we meet tomorrow? Always include the context, because whether you're flexible or inflexible, our minds are filling in the gap of what could it be. Do not assume that they know your intentions. So that's just free advice if you're a supervisor. Now let's go over the 6 skills of psychological flexibility. I'm going to break these down looking at the Hexaflex. First is diffusion. So inflexibility says, I'm failing. Flexibility says, I'm noticing the thought that I'm failing. See, diffusion creates that space between you and your thought. So instead of seeing it from here, you begin to see it out here. The thought can still be present, but notice that I can see what else is going on in the room. It doesn't just get to sit there in the driver's seat and everything is filtered through that thought. So the application. So how can you do this? Well, the next time you notice a stressful work thought, try adding, I'm having a thought that. All right, this simple phrase can help create that distance. Here's the thought. I'm noticing the thought, or I'm having the thought. It's not, I am that thought. It's simple, but it's powerful. And it gives just enough distance to have some flexibility. The next is acceptance. So inflexibility says, I can't handle this anxiety. In fact, it puts an ultimatum that either the anxiety goes or I can't be okay. Flexibility says, anxiety is here and I can make room for it. Acceptance is not liking the stress, it's acknowledging the stress. It's not like ignoring that it's in the room. It's just stopping that endless fight against it. It's here, okay. It's like the guests that you didn't really want to show up at the party. They knock, you open the door, they come in, but you could still go enjoy the party. You don't have to make your party experience about that unwanted guest. So how do you do this? What's the application? Well, when stress shows up, ask, what happens if I stop trying to get rid of this feeling for the next 60 seconds? What if I can just sit with this and be here? And then at the end of that 60 seconds, notice that you are willing to accept the presence of that anxiety. Just having that shift can help a lot. The next is contact with the present moment. Now, this is where inflexibility lives in yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's worries. It's never really here and now. It's always there and then. And so tomorrow's worries start to dominate or yesterday's mistakes start to be rehearsed. But you are here and you are now. You are in the present moment. You are always in the present moment, but your head wants to take you to the past or future. So how can you apply this? What can you do? Well, I think instituting a pause is really helpful. Just getting yourself back into the room. Now, I like to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or just even naming 5 things is appropriate. But I like to do things I haven't noticed before. So what are 5 things I can see in the room? So you point out objects or just little differences and intricacies. And then you can say, what are 4 things that I can feel? And so I might touch like different things in the room, different fabrics, materials. What are 3 things I can hear? For this, I might close my eyes and listen. I'm noticing the air conditioner, noticing the cars outside. Then you can say, what are 2 things I can smell? And maybe for this, you might smell your deodorant, you might smell your hair conditioner or shampoo. And then taste. What's 1 thing I can taste? And for this, I might just put my tongue to the back of my hand, or if I have something like a drink around, I might take a drink. But I need something that helps me get back in the room, and it's under 1 minute. Just something real quick I can do to stay present. So have something in place for when you need to remind yourself that I'm here and I'm now. The next is self as context. Now, inflexibility says, I am my performance. I am what I do. I am my productivity. I am my sales numbers. It also says, I am my mistakes. It's subtle, but it's locked in. We have to remember this is self as content. This is the thoughts, the feelings that are coming in. They are not us. We are the container. We are the larger landscape. Flexibility says that I am the one that's noticing these experiences. I cannot be both the thought itself and the one who notices the thought. I am the knower. I am the observer. So you can say something like, this is weather. I am not the weather. I am the sky that contains the weather. Or this is a chess piece that's moving back and forth, but I am the chessboard. I am the place in which all these mental events and emotional events are happening. The next is values. Now, inflexibility asks, how do I stop this bad feeling? And it forgets where it's going. It forgets those value directions that are in place because anxiety has showed up or stress has blocked it out, and you're focused so much on getting rid of this. And you're seeking something else, but it may move you away from your value directions. Flexibility asks, what kind of person do I want to be? How is this helping me to become that person? You see, values provide direction. It is your North Star. They're not destinations like goals. And sometimes things don't go as according to plan, but you can still go there at any point by focusing on your directions, which are your values. So how do you apply this? Well, instead of asking, what do I feel like doing? Ask something else. What kind of employee do I want to be? What would that employee do next? What kind of leader do I want to be? What would that leader do next? What kind of therapist do I want to be? What would that therapist do next? Or parent or whatever. You can use that value as kind of your counselor in that moment to say, what would that person do in my situation? And then finally, it's committed action. Inflexibility freezes us. It avoids, it flees, it procrastinates, or reacts impulsively. It rarely has our best interest in mind. We actually end up proving those fears true. I don't want to get fired, but it also does all the things that are fireable. You don't show up on time. There's always an excuse. It's always something that didn't happen. But when inflexibility runs the show, your life gets worse and worse and worse. Flexibility takes those small, meaningful actions. It sees it. It notices all the things that are going on, but it sees the next small step that's going to move it in that value direction. So even when that discomfort is present, committed action knows what it's going to do next. Now, for clients, I talk about pre-choice choices. And a committed action is kind of a pre-choice choice. So before you ever get into that situation, what are you going to do? Especially if you have work stress and it's going to be there tomorrow when you're there at work. If it's already built in, what can you do? Well, decide that in advance. So when you get there, you go ahead and do that small step. Now, you can apply this by asking yourself, what is that one small step that I can take today that moves me towards what matters? We're not talking about tomorrow. We're not talking about next month or next year. We're not in the future. We're in today. We're in the here and now. And I am a believer, and I am optimistic that in every situation, you can move in that direction of the person that you're wanting to become. So it may be a text, maybe a conversation, and maybe a journal, but what would that person do next? Now, the Hexaflex isn't 6 separate techniques, okay? You're not trying to do you're juggling or spinning plates, okay? You're not trying to keep everyone spinning. It's 6 ways of describing the same skill of psychological flexibility. And all the things that somebody who is psychologically flexible that they do. If you're flexible, you're able to notice your thoughts as they're happening. You're if you're flexible, you're able to make room for those feelings when they show up. If you're flexible, you stay present. You're here. You're not trying to get out of it. If you're flexible, you're able to take perspective. You're able to see that person you want to become 5 years from now, looking back at you and saying, what should I do next based on what that counselor, that future me wants to do? And if you're flexible, you remember what matters. And, when I get into a stressful situation, I do think about those that are important to me. I begin to think about my kids. I think about my wife. And I think about that person that is in the future that's waiting for me to make those right choices. I think about myself in 10 years from now, the kind of person I want to be. So these are the things that help to be like a North Star that help you when you're in a very stressful and anxious place to take a committed action that leads to better results. And with enough of those small steps, you end up going some pretty far distances. I'm reminded that forget who said it, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think even in our cars, when we're driving at night, our headlights only go out maybe 100 yards. And we're able to go great distances with just that little light on our path. I hope today helps you as you get into your work situations and contexts to begin to work on this master skill of psychological flexibility. Now, we've identified some burnout patterns, and then we talked about this relational network that we develop, how we're meaning makers. And then today we talked about psychological flexibility. Now, the goal isn't to stop your mind from producing stress or self-doubt or burnout stories. That would be nice, but the reality is it may show up anyways. And what are we going to do next? Because freedom isn't found when difficult thoughts disappear. Freedom is found when they no longer run your life. And that is psychological flexibility. Now remember, your journey towards a more purposeful and mindful life begins with a single click.